Your body treats sitting almost like a disease. Stay still long enough, and within minutes, systems quietly begin to switch off inside you: circulation, blood sugar, the enzymes that clear fat from your blood. None of it is your fault. It's a 2 million-year-old survival program running in a world it was never built for, and it starts with a number that stunned the researchers who found it. Here's that number. Hunter-gatherers like the Hadza spend almost 10 hours a day off their feet, about as much as you do at a desk. Yet they barely get the diseases our sitting causes. Same hours of rest, opposite health. So the danger was never how long we sit. It's something about how. The difference is what the body does while it rests. When the Hadza stop, they squat or kneel, postures that keep the leg muscles quietly firing. A chair asks nothing of them. Your largest muscles fall completely silent for hours at a time. Scientists call it the inactivity mismatch, and that silence is where the trouble begins. Because movement was never exercise, it was the price of eating. A Hadza forager covers 8 to 14 kilometers a day, more than most of us walk in a week, and still burns about the same daily calories you do. Your body simply assumes constant low-level motion is normal. Take it away, and the machinery starts to misread everything. Start with your blood. Every step squeezes a deep calf muscle, the soleus, pushing blood uphill against gravity, back toward your heart. It works so hard that physiologists call it your second heart. Now picture what happens the moment you sit down, and that second heart simply stops beating. It goes quiet. Blood in your legs slows and starts to pool. And here's the unsettling part. The lining of your arteries begins to suffer, not over years, but within minutes. The damage clock starts almost the second you sit. And circulation is only the first system to go. Next, fat. An enzyme living on your blood vessels, lipoprotein lipase, pulls fat out of your bloodstream so it can be burned. In silent, sitting muscle, its activity doesn't just dip, it collapses by around 90%. So the fat from your last meal keeps circulating with nowhere to go. And now the part that ruins a comfortable excuse. In studies, a full hour on the treadmill barely restored that enzyme. What controlled it wasn't exercise at all. It was the constant, low-level activity of simply not sitting. Your morning workout and your still body are two completely different problems. Then there's blood sugar. After a meal, your muscles are where the glucose is meant to go, but only while they're contracting. Sit still and they stop pulling it in. So the sugar lingers in your blood, high, far longer than it should, meal after meal after meal. The fix, though, is almost absurdly small. In one trial, breaking up sitting with under 2 minutes of walking every half hour cut the blood sugar and insulin spike after a meal by about 28%. Not a workout, just refusing to stay still. Now stretch that over years. Every extra 2 hours of daily screen time is tied to roughly a 20% higher risk of type 2 diabetes. That's the shift you have to make. Sitting isn't empty, neutral time. It's a dose, and it quietly adds up. But the deepest change is happening where you can't feel it, inside your cells. Movement tells your mitochondria, your tiny power plants, to multiply. Stillness tells them to quietly disappear. Go inactive, and measurable loss of muscle and power can show up in a matter of days. Remember those arteries. Just 3 hours of unbroken sitting cut the flow response in a leg artery roughly in half, an early sign of vessels beginning to stiffen. But here's the hopeful part. 5 minutes of walking each hour erased that damage completely. And it isn't only metabolism. Sitting reshapes your frame. It loads your lower spine about 40% harder than standing. The muscles meant to hold you upright switch off, while the hip flexors in front slowly shorten, locking you into the very shape of the chair. Even just standing tips the balance. Tiny, unscheduled movements, fidgeting, pacing, standing to talk, can quietly burn hundreds of extra calories a day. It's called NEAT, And it may be the hidden reason some bodies stay lean while others, eating the same, don't. The signal reaches further than you'd expect, all the way to cancer. Across millions of people, each extra 2 hours of sitting is tied to about 8% higher colon cancer risk and 10% for endometrial. And it held even in people who exercised regularly. Add it all together, and the mortality data is blunt. Sitting around 10 hours a day is linked to roughly a 34% higher risk of dying early, and the curve barely moves at first. Then, once you pass 7 or 8 hours, it climbs fast. Which sets the trap most people fall into. You can run every single morning and still spend the other 15 hours sedentary. Fitness and sitting are two separate accounts. The gym doesn't buy back the chair. The fit all-day sitter is still quietly at risk. But this was never a story about doom. In over 1 million people, 60 to 75 minutes of moderate daily movement essentially wiped out the extra death risk from long sitting. Your body is astonishingly forgiving if you simply give it enough motion. This is exactly the mismatch Darwin's idea predicts. Your genes were written for a savanna of non-stop motion, and now they run inside a body pinned to a desk. Your DNA didn't change, your day did. The chair is far younger than your biology. So the prescription isn't a marathon. Stand up every 30 minutes. 2 minutes of movement is enough to switch the pump, the enzyme, and your blood sugar uptake back on. Rest like the Hadza. Squat, pace, fidget. The trick was never training harder, it's refusing to stay still. Because your body isn't adapting to the average week. It's adapting to this hour, this chair, right now. And every one of them is a quiet instruction. So the only real question left is what you are teaching it to become.